Hey guys, a while back we got an email from a viewer asking about which type might exhibit kind of black and white thinking, and we responded that it usually pertains to like the last function, because we probably have the most like black or white or like all or nothing usage of that function. And then I was like, oh, that might make for a cool video to actually describe how each type, or like I guess each last function slot, manifests into this kind of all or nothing usage.
I approach it more as like a mask that you use. You're normally not good at using it, but in stressful situations you kind of dial it up, or you pretend to use it really, really well in order to soothe your insecurities.
Right. We think we use our last function well, but actually it's like we just have this very rudimentary usage of it, whereas like higher up it would be used with much more complexity and kind of finesse.
Right, yeah.
So let's start with TI, so Inferior Ti in the ExFJs. So for that I said that they might attribute too much to a single line of logical reasoning and really just like defend that singular line of logical reasoning over and over again. Whereas like a higher TI user would probably see that line of reasoning, but then understand that like in different situations it may kind of manifest differently or may not always hold true all the time. And I think with the ExFJs with dominant FE, they'll just see this like singular TI thing that they like, this logic that they like, and they'll defend it using FE, and they'll explain like all the external reasons of like why this has value or why this has merit, as opposed to actually explaining the logic further itself.
Usually in my SI note taking it's very concise, and I just realized I wrote double down. Sometimes when people call them out on their logical inconsistencies, I think they can become defensive and they double down on whatever they said before, and then tend to like come up with all sorts of like weird TI fragments that don't actually like coalesce into a singular system. But then it's like, oh look, I know this other fact, therefore I'm right. I know this other fact, like wait, but they're not actually like totally relevant. FE DOMs, like they often think that one thing is correct for everyone. I think that's part of the rudimentary use of TI. Right. Like, oh, let me give you advice, you should do this. It's like, wait, but maybe that works for you, but maybe not everyone.
Yeah, I came up with example of like an FE user I know who like thinks certain career paths are better than others, and they use this as like a logic.
So funny. I know one like that too.
Yeah, and it's like they always go back to this logic of like, yes, but these types of professional jobs, they'll just get you more success. They just will. Just like this low TI, like yes, this fact is always true. But then they always use like FE to be like, well, this is more valuable because people will respect this job and things like that. And it's like, well, actually, if you use logic, I think it's more logical to have a career that's best suited to each individual, and not like this entire field is always better than this entire field.
Yep. Relate so much.
Higher TI will just consider more factors, and yeah, they'll just have more lines of logical reasoning that'll probably all tie together as opposed to like those fragments. So for inferior FI in the ExTJs, they will attribute too much to like a single value that maybe isn't like that well thought out or that well defined, and will strongly defend it in various different like scenarios. So they might not actually see the subjective value of that thing. They'll just kind of, with the low FI, there's just this one thing that they like and they've attached onto, and then they'll just use all these streams of like TE facts of like why this value has merit. But then if you look into it, it's like they probably didn't think that much about the actual merit of the value itself. An example is just kind of like holding specific rules and kind of enforcing that through like TE facts. Like we always have to do this thing because it's valuable, but then actually it's because of like, look at this TE reason, look at that TE reason, look at that.
Okay, interesting. I wrote romantic flower child. I know it's such a cliche, but they're quite like vulnerable like underneath it all, and I think part of it is their black and white stance on morality. Like for example, people were like, oh, these people are not the type that you say they are, and then I was thinking like, man, it'd be so easy if we just like agreed with everyone of what their types are. We just make a confirmation service instead of a typing service. And then my boyfriend was like, that's wrong. I was so fast. I was like, my Like quick judgment. It's like, wait, but is it wrong though? I mean, I still think it's probably wrong, but it's not as black and white as wrong or right. Like something like that, you can think of so many good points. Like, oh, you make the person more confident. You validate their feelings about their type. There's so many good points. He was like, that's wrong though. I'm like, okay.
I think this kind of goes into this maybe like social justice warrior stereotype. Yeah, this like low usage of FI. Like, yes, this is always right and that thing is always wrong, and I am just going to like, very quickly just like use TE to like defend this kind of FI value that is just not very well defined, I think.
Yeah, and generally they do things that are the most like TE effective in real life, but sometimes, usually when you ask about their motivations, they're quite sensitive in defending like their righteous purpose for doing like motivation. Like, oh, I'm actually doing this because I'm like helping out everyone. Whereas I'm sure like, 70% of the reason is making a lot of money, but no, they really want to defend that like FI core value.
Right. Even I experienced this in my teen years, kind of like before I even started developing SE and when I was kind of developing FI. I guess like drinking age in Canada is 18, so you can like start going to clubs at like 18.
Okay.
And then like when guys hit on me or like hit on a friend that like didn't want it, I'll just be like, no way! I think
Mama Bear Alex. So awesome.
Higher FI, again, I think will have like many more reasons or much more kind of granularity of like, okay, maybe I value this in this situation, but maybe in these situations it's kind of a bit different, and go into like depth of like why this value actually like makes sense to them, and not just like, yes, this value all the time. Inferior Ni in the ESxPs. So I feel like they will attribute too much meaning to an underlying theme or pattern they noticed, but they won't always see that it applies maybe in a very specific context, and they'll kind of like overextend the breadth that it actually could apply to. When they're like, oh yeah, like there's like this societal trend and this is always true. And I'm like, oh. And then they'll be like, oh, but here's this SE example of like how it's true. And then here's another SE example of how it's true. But I think with higher NI, at least in my experience, I'm like, well, yeah, those two things could prove that NI trend, but it also could prove like maybe like 5 other NI trends or factors that potentially could be causing it.
So for NI, I wrote sage, predictor, consequence warrior. Okay, right. A lot of times these inferior NI people, they suddenly freak out about the consequence of one SE thing without being correct about their prediction, because they're not considering like other SE things. And I always sadly use this like bar owner as an example, because he was like an ESFP, and then he would like freak out if someone returned food, and he would be like, oh, if everyone returns food, we would go bankrupt. You're not allowed to return food. I don't care, you don't like it, eat it. And it's like, okay, you're not predicting the NI consequence correctly here. You're like freaking out about this one SE thing. Maybe that's even falsifying a pattern. Like it's like afraid, what if like that becomes a pattern, everyone returns food? No, it's just that one occasional person. Like you need to make leeway for the one person.
So higher NI will like always seek out like all the exceptions to the rule to make sure that it actually is valid, or they could kind of see connections or those potential exceptions to the rule they could see as another NI pattern, where it's like, okay, in these scenarios it goes this way, in these scenarios, the trend goes that way. Yeah, and in any SE experience, they could probably attribute like many multiple NI potential cause and effect linkages until they kind of ascertain it with more SE experiences. So I think SE will just like latch on to this like one NI experience and run with it and freak out about it. So for inferior SI in the ENxPs, I think they might attribute too much meaning to a past event or maybe an association that they made on like 2 or 3 past events, and think that, again, it like always holds true all the time, when maybe it was like more specific to like just a few of those experiences.
Okay, my thing for the inferior SI is doubling down on personal associations of like a couple of things. Like one specific thing has become so meaningful because of their like value over time. So my example was like a ENTP who, it didn't really matter if I was carrying like 0 bags and he had to carry like 4 bags. He's like, no, man has to carry all the bags. It's just like weird, because you would think that SI Dom might do that, but these like weird little exhibitions of like SI inferior people. And then also ENFP person. One ENFP was so upset, not because like someone forgot her birthday, but her significant other didn't get her a birthday card, even though he remembered and like got like a little present or something. But she just had so much SI attachment to this idea of getting a handwritten card on her birthday. She was like super upset. So it could exhibit in any way. So I think that one is more elusive because you just have to find the like
one attachment that they hold on to so strongly.
So if they like make a huge deal out of this one thing that otherwise might not be important to everyone, that might be like inferior SI.
Again, it's like this one singular past event maybe that they think is like, okay, this shapes my entire understanding of everything, and they can use NE to kind of validate that through like thinking of all these potential ways in which that is always true. I knew like an NE Dom who had this idea about like the new world order or something that like happened after like World War II, and he would like attribute like everything back to this like one thing. I remember there was this like trailer for this horror movie that we were considering watching, and it was kind of based on like Hansel and Gretel, and then somehow he connected that to like the vilification of Germans or something like that based on this whole like World War II new order thing. And
I can do that too as a mental exercise. So much fun.
Right,
everything
but he actually truly
else.
believed it. He was like, oh man, this is so like racist, and I'm like, oh, I think it's just like I'm all for like acknowledging like bigotry when it happens, but I think this was just a case of like just a fairy tale, just a very SI thing that he was clinging on to. Higher SI, I think, will have more nuanced information on every single event, and we'll just have like loads more of these associations, so there won't be like one little thing that they cling on to so strongly.
Very well worded, I think.
Yeah, so I think higher SI can kind of fact check between multiple SIs and be like, yeah, no, that's not always true. So, inferior Te in the IxFPs. So I feel like they might attribute too much to like one or few logical facts that are like externally observable, and may not see like other TE facts that could dispute that or override it. They might justify their actions around these few TE facts and kind of use FI to explain like why it's of value, but might not see that maybe it's not the most logical option.
Okay, experientially, I feel like I went to a bunch of job interviews where it's like I feel insecure from like lack of using TE very well. So somehow, like I wrote down here, confident asshole. It's like, no, I don't know, somehow like people ask me a question and it's like maybe you need logical nuance in answering this question. But I'm like, I can do it like the best. I don't know like why I say that, but it's like I become extra aggressive in using like this external logical reasoning. It's like, oh, that thing, well, I can learn that thing and then therefore do that thing even though I didn't do it before. Like it's just so aggressive, and it's like, okay, I gotta tone that down in these like work scenarios, like scaring people off.
I feel like higher TE will kind of take in multiple facts and kind of deduce like which group of facts or which way to view it is like the most logically consistent. Whereas like, yeah, like low FI just might like cling on to like this one TE observable fact and just like run with it.
Oh yeah, the other thing I noticed is that sometimes when someone is not doing a TE thing properly, like a really minor thing, I get really annoyed, and I think it's just like me projecting my own annoyance on my lack of using TE.
Right.
Which is relevant to the FE inferior that I'll talk about later.
You don't have to use this example, but I feel like this is kind of apparent in like how we respond to like commenters or like emails and stuff. Where it's like you're like, no, there's this one TE thing, and it's like therefore it's obviously wrong, and you'll like defend it with your FI so viciously, and I'm like,
viciously. I'm leaving that in.
No, not viciously.
Oh
I meant
God.
like, I think I meant vehemently. But
they're so different, vehement and vicious. Oh my God.
Sorry,
that's so
my
funny.
bad,
it's like SI shades of word meaning.
Yeah.
They're like, eh.
So inferior FE in the IXTPs. So I feel they might attribute too much to something that has some sort of external merit, like maybe following a certain social norm or just like the value of their role in society, and may not see that there are plenty of other things that have external merit, and they kind of just cling to this like singular thing.
I wrote algorithm for the IXTPs because I feel like they're some of the most polite people I know, but like when they're doing these things, social things, like bringing a dish to a potluck, like you're supposed to, saying thank you and goodbye to everyone, like when they apply it, it seems a little off to me, like they're applying an algorithm. It's not coming from, like, I don't know, it's not coming from their TI truth. Maybe it's just something that they realize that they have to do in the external world to survive. Yeah, so I don't know, I guess maybe it's just I'm an FI Dom, so I am very perceptive towards these things, but I just feel like they're applying some sort of code that they should do, and it comes off as a little bit mechanical to me. And yet I think they're one of the most sensitive to like their perceived lack of FE towards them. Right. So like if I forget to say goodbye, or if I say something that could be like a little bit offensive, I think they are most likely to think that it was directed at them and be like, what did I do to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, like I feel like higher FE will be able to approach these sort of like social norms on like a basis by basis scenario, and it'll be kind of more personalized to the person they're talking to. And and I think like the low TI just like does the same thing every single time, just like
a low FE.
Low FE, like high TI.
Okay,
dominant.
I just thought of an example with my dad who's inferior FE. Once I was just like, my boyfriend was here to pick me up, so I don't want him to like wait a long time, but then I couldn't find my jacket, so I was like, where's my jacket? And he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, is it upstairs? Like, no, it's not upstairs. I was just maybe a little bit louder because I was worried to be late. Right. But he was like, what are you mad at me for? I didn't put away your jacket. I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I just raised my voice pitch by like a little bit.
So he could hear you right now because of like...
No, not because he could hear me, just because I was in a hurry and nervous. So I was like, what did I do? And then he's like, why are you mad at me? His eyes were like watering, like, what are you mad at me for?
An example that I had was like, there was like 2 IXTPs that I knew that maybe kind of chose a major in college based on like either what their family wanted them to do, or like, I don't know, like a more respectable kind of career choice, if you will. So it's like they're like, they're clinging onto this one FE factor of external merit, but then they're like, they maybe not see that like, choosing other things also has external merit in an FE way, right? Just in a different sense. And they'll usually kind of build a TI logical framework to like defend this like singularity of FE and like why it's logical to act this way, but they might not be like, oh, okay, there's actually like loads of other valuable things out there to do.
Okay, I want to share this one thing, and some people might not think it has merit because it's kind of not externally provable, but one thing that I love to do is read like the really long Reddit posts asking for relationship advice. I feel like I'm at a point where I can see the MBTI type of the posters, even though it's just text. When an INTP post, I know that they're INTP just somehow based on what they say. So a lot of times like something bad happens, right? Say someone cheats or something. The ones that I think are INTP, they always like say all these things, and at the end say like, what do you guys think about it? Or what do you think I should do? Or what's socially appropriate in this situation? And then a lot of it is like, was I wrong in this situation, or was she wrong? It's like, wait, it's a relationship. It's not like who's wrong. It's based on external FE criteria. It's just how do you feel about it? If you're not okay with accepting it, then leave, right? But they're like, wait, am I being too much? Is my emotionality justified? Is my jealousy justified? It's like, wow, like when I read those, I'm like, yeah, I think it's the INTP on the other side of the screen.
Yeah, it's like so black and white usage of FE. It's like either I was right or she was right or something.
Yeah, or either this thing was socially appropriate. It's like, oh,
or was it?
This person is like flirting with this person in this way, and she said this and he said this. Is this socially appropriate? It's like, no. What about like, are you okay with it? That's I guess my FI approach to that.
So low SE in the INxJs.
Oh my gosh, forgot that existed.
I think they'll attribute too much to a singular experience and not be open enough to kind of experience other scenarios where they might gather information that will kind of show that that singular experience they had doesn't happen all the time, or maybe it's like a really rare anomaly. I feel like I do this a lot, and you probably even noticed that like I'll just encounter some sort of SE information that like disproves my like entire NI framework on something, and I'll just like go into this anxiety spiral and be like, I have to throw out my entire like NI understanding about everything because of this singular SE data point, and then I'll just like experience a few more things and be like, oh, okay. That was just like an anomaly.
Oh my gosh, you do that. Once you were like, oh, my smile doesn't go up that much. What if I am an INFJ? It's like, okay, just calm down. What about all the other SE things that say you're an INFJ? It's interesting you need new SE data, not like previous NI reassurance. It's like this SE grip is like this new SE, like rogue just comes in and ruins everything. Like this messes the whole room up.
Even like I think in starting this MBTI channel, like if I had done this myself, I think there would probably be so many obstacles along the way where I would just be like, okay, that's it. I can't get around this like one obstacle. Maybe it's more like an I thinking like, no, I can't do this because like we don't have proper equipment, or like we don't have this or we don't have that, and it'll just be too hard, and eventually I'll run out of ideas. And then once I go into the actual SE experience of doing it.
That's interesting. It's so opposite from like a ESxP, who will probably get over all this object or material obstacles and just do it.
So high SE users, I think if they would encounter something that maybe threw them off a little bit, then they would just like seek out more experiences and kind of just collect a more diverse pool of information to kind of get more information from different contexts. Then they'd be able to kind of integrate it all together, where it's like an NI just probably is so blocked off from their SE most of the time that when they experience something, it's like, what do I do?
Yeah, I feel like I did a completely different thing. I think I just wrote like secret hedonist or something. It's just like once in a while the INTJ, INFJ will be in a super comfort cocoon mode of like eating fine foods and like wearing like cashmere sweaters, and then occasionally going into like a party animal mode, which I've heard of like an INTJ friend who people have said that he like sometimes just gets stressed out and then goes and drinks a lot and then gets into experiences that he regrets. I was like, oh, interesting.
I feel like that's kind of true for me too.
Okay, good. I didn't just make it up.
Yeah, I think like even like when we were living together, like...
Oh yeah, like when you were like, hey, let's go into the stairwell and talk to these strangers. This actually happened. It was amazing.
I would never do that when I was just like super drunk. But yeah, I feel like when I'm super drunk, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, my SE is free to roam. Like no more NI inhibition.
That's so funny. I was like, wait, why did I write bracket Mexico? I remember we went to Mexico and like it was one of those like unlimited drinks thing, and you let loose way more than me, like way more. I still had my guards up, but you were like, wow, we're on vacation.
So the low NE of the ISxJs, they will attribute too much to like a singular potentiality, which is either maybe like a potential future or like a potential connection between ideas, and not see all the other multiple potentials like higher NE users will normally see, and then just like attribute way too much to that kind of potential thing. And then they'll usually gather like all their SI data that they have to kind of support this one NE potential that they see, even though it's probably like only one of like 100 potential NE things that could possibly exist.
One thing I've noticed is that a lot of inferior NE people, including celebrities, they present as very free-spirited actually, or quirky. And I noticed a trend that a lot of like ISTJs and ISFJs think they're high NE users. Like some of...
Right.
Yeah, like I know like an ISFJ who swears that he's like ENFP, and it's like, oh my gosh, you're so nice. ENFP.
So I guess like Calypso's ISTJ friend, when we first started our MBTI channel, he was like, oh, I don't think there's any potential for success for you guys. So it was like this like one singular NE possibility of like this channel not doing well, and then all this SI data to back it up. Like,
oh yeah. Oh, that's so good. I forgot about that. His argument for why our channel will fail is because the other channels didn't succeed by his metrics. He was like, well, like no one has ever done it, therefore it's impossible. I was like, wait, that's so low NE.
Right. The high NE will just brainstorm multiple other ideas that contradict that like singular NE. Like, okay, yes, this channel could succeed if we do this or if we do that or this way or that way. Yeah, so thanks so much for watching this, you guys. Let us know how you experience your lower function. Is it also kind of like black and white usage where it's like you don't use it and then all of a sudden you use it in this like rampage and it's not that well refined? And if you guys want to support our channel, then consider pledging your support at Patreon. We'll link that below. We also offer typing services based on objective criteria, so you can go to cognitive8.com to check that out. And we'll see you next time. Bye.